Do you want to take control of your health? Hear the truth about dieting and weight loss? Learn the best strategies for maintaining a healthy lifestyle? This is the Yossi Muller Show.
And welcome to the show. I'm Yossi Muller. Duddy is a chef who's apparently not paying attention.
What? Take control of your health? We did that already? Oh, I'm Duddy Muller.
Duddy is a chef with a background in nutrition.
Yossi is a nutritionist with a background in nutrition.
Every show we do, we take another myth and debunk it.
Crush it.
Today's topic is, I'm 90% on the diet. People think that when they're, for the most part, following their diet, and they're, in their mind, 90% of the diet, people think they're doing 9/10 of what they're supposed to be doing, and they're not.
Why is that?
You don't know? I sent you an email.
I didn't get one.
But I sent an email. I sent it to Duddy Muller at...
That's not my email address.
What? Your name's not Duddy Muller? That's not close enough?
That's not how it works. Close enough doesn't help by emails.
Aha! Right. You can't 90% send someone an email. You either send it or you don't.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. You're not 90% sending an email and you're not 90% following your diet. There are different scenarios where people think that they were 90% on the diet. It's possible that they feel like most of the time I was on the diet, so I'm 90% on the diet. Problem with that is that it takes a minute to break your diet, and most of the time people aren't eating.
Right, that's true.
Even people who weigh 800 pounds are most of the time not eating.
Yeah, a study was done in the United States, and it said that an average American spends 67 minutes per day eating food and drinking beverages. That's less than 5% of the day. So you're going to say that the average American is dieting or fasting over 95% of the time? No, the average American is significantly overweight. Even people who spend excessive amounts of time eating will only eat twice as often and are still fasting 90% of the day. You see how following a diet 90% of the time doesn't mean anything.
Another example where people think that they're 90% is because the food that they ate was very similar to what they were supposed to eat. A common example I see is when someone goes from eating pizza to my office and they ask me what they should eat for lunch, and I say, do 2 slices of whole wheat bread, a can of tuna, 2 flat tablespoons of light mayonnaise, a low-fat tuna sandwich. And what they do is they go back to the pizza shop, and instead of eating their 2 slices of pizza, they have a tuna wrap.
Which is bigger than a sandwich, and it's regular tuna, not light tuna.
And it's the same calories.
The same calories as pizza.
So you just had 800 calories, high carb, high fat, just like pizza is 800 calories, high carb, high fat. And you did the exact same thing, but in your mind, it can't be that a tuna wrap is similar to pizza. That's got to be a lot closer to what I was told to do, the tuna sandwich.
Right. I mean, the nutritionist did say, tuna. I did tuna.
Another scenario where people think that they were 90% on the diet is because they can only remember a few instances where they messed up. So it's got to be that they were 90% on the diet, but I have news for you. The scale doesn't care what you remember. It's not that if you forgot that handful of cashews that is 800 calories, the scale's not going to say, okay, we're not going to set you back on your entire week just because you forgot that you ate that. It still counts. In fact, if you remember a few instances where you messed up, that means you're not focused on the diet. And there were certainly many other times where you messed up and you don't even know about it. Someone came to me the day after Hanukkah, and he was nervous to get on the scale because he said that he had 8 donuts. He had 1 every day. He had 8 donuts total. And he gets on the scale, and he maintained weight that week. He did not gain weight, and he was shocked. How could it possibly be? And I explained to him that a donut is 300 calories.
Oh, that's it?
A typical donut.
Yeah, okay.
So if you're eating a 300-calorie donut 8 times, if you do the math, that's a pound. And instead of losing a pound this week, you maintained weight. Why are you so surprised? So he said, because everyone knows that donuts are fattening. I explained to him that they're not fattening. No food is fattening. If you go over your calories, then your diet is fattening. If not, not. This week, you had a donut every single day, and Otherwise, you stuck to your plan. And the reason why donuts have a reputation of being fattening is because when you had a donut every day, you otherwise stuck to the same plan. But when other people have a donut every day, it changes their entire mindset. The week that they had donuts, they gain 4 pounds that week because they didn't otherwise stick to their plan. That week that they had the donuts, they had a double portion of rice. What's the difference between a half a cup and a full cup? I'm eating donuts anyway.
Right, yes.
And not only did they have a double portion of rice, this week they made the rice with onion soup mix because they're anyway not in dieting mode. They're eating donuts. And this week, of course, they cooked the rice with the chicken, so it soaked up 300 calories of fat from the gravy from the chicken. And last time they cooked the rice on its own. So there you go. That's 4 pounds over the course of the week just because you had a double portion of rice and you had the gravy from the chicken and you had the onion soup mix, which to you, it just looked like, okay, so I wasn't as careful with the portion size or how it was prepared. That's why donuts are fattening.
Another example of where someone thinks he or she followed 90% of the diet is, quote, I only ate what was allowed. I just ate more of it. They think that eating what is on the plan but not being careful about amounts is considered 90%. If I was on a budget and can't afford Prada shoes, I can only afford Steve Madden's. Does that mean I can buy 20 pairs of Steve Madden's? No. So too, I can't eat uncontrolled amounts of even allowed foods.
And when I have a client who shows up and thinks that he or she was following the diet 90% and is fuming that not only did they not lose weight, but they even gained a pound, they say, how could it possibly be? Everything you're saying with the math and the calories and the mindset, it can't possibly be like that because I'm working so hard. I must be awfully close to perfection. So I asked them, wait, slow down. If you're working so hard and you're dieting, maybe you were perfect. So the person will say back, well, I remember at least once or twice breaking the diet. So I say, aha, so you know about some of the times, but there are some other times that you don't remember, and I'll explain why. Because it's hard work to almost be on a diet. It's much harder to almost be on a diet than to be on a diet to the letter. So this that you say you worked hard, so that means you must have been 90% on your diet? That means nothing. When you're not 100% on a diet, there's a lot of stress because there's a lot of decision making. When a person who's 100% on a diet shows up to a donut opportunity, that person says no to the donut and moves on. The person who is 90% on a diet shows up to the donut. They spend a half hour debating, should I eat the donut? Should I not? Should I eat? Should I not? I'll have one. No. If I have one, I'll have more. Okay, I'll cut it in half. No, I'll wait till the end. It's such a battle, and you're working very hard. And then when you eat the donut, you still think you're on a diet because you spent a half hour
working on your diet. You work so hard, you think you're doing well. Meanwhile, you worked for no reason and you failed anyway.
And when you are almost on a diet, you're not building good habits.
Yep.
And when a person breaks their diet, you become hungry. You become physically hungry. You become emotionally hungry.
Right. This is especially true by me. I break my diet. If I don't follow it, the next day, it's so much harder to get back on once you break it.
And if I'm on a diet, I'm going to be thinking about food a lot. People who are not dieting aren't thinking about food all day. People who are dieting, especially if they're not dieting 100%, they obsess about food. The only way to not obsess about food is to follow your diet 100% because then there are no choices. So someone who is 90% on a diet, do you know what they do? They end up compensating for what they're doing in other ways that they wouldn't have otherwise. Do you remember we went to a certain event and they were serving Napoleons for dessert?
I remember this.
We were at this event and we were on a table where everyone was on a diet, quote unquote, the 90% on a diet type.
Of course, right?
And they came around with Napoleons and there's one person at the table who's not on a diet. Now, the rest of them, maybe they're not succeeding, but at least they're giving it an honest effort, what they consider an honest effort. And I always tell everyone, this person who's not on a diet is better than you who's 90% on a diet. And the story at this event demonstrated what I was talking about because the person came around with the Napoleon and offers the first person, and that person says, I already messed up my diet during the main course, so I'll have a dessert. Then the next person said, oh, this is a special occasion, so I'll have the dessert. The next person said, the day's killed, I'll start my diet tomorrow. So the next person had the dessert, and everyone had a different reason why they're going to have the dessert. The next person just said, I'll taste the dessert, and as soon as she tasted it, she finished not only her dessert, but the next, she asked for doubles. And do you know the only person who didn't take the Napoleon? The person not on the diet, because he's not obsessing about food all day. when you're on a diet and you're not following it, you're worse than if you're not on a diet.
When you're not on a diet, you don't necessarily have an extra force against you, against your healthy eating.
It's like the guy who doesn't smell too good. And when asked why the person's not taking care of their hygiene, the person says, "What do you mean? I took a shower almost every day this week. It doesn't make sense. I almost took a shower on Sunday. I almost took a shower on Monday. I almost took a shower on Tuesday."
Yeah. So this person almost smells good.
You are either on the diet or not on the diet. And this matters because people think that if they're basically on a diet, they'll lose weight. Maybe they won't lose as much as if they were 100% on. Maybe they won't lose as fast. They'll get to where they want to go, but it will just take longer. That's not how it works.
So, Yossi, when people think that they are 90% on a diet, what are they really?
It depends on the person, but on average, 0%.
0%?
Yes, because some people will do 0%, some people will do 5%, some people do negative 5%, meaning they're worse off by what they think is 90% than if they weren't dieting at all.
So is there a point in dieting if I won't be doing it 100%?
Perhaps there's a point, as long as the person fully understands that what he or she thinks is 90% is really much less than 90%. But if you think that 90% is 90%, then it's pointless because you'll see minimal results, you'll be working very hard, you'll be expecting better results, and you will lose faith in dieting.
Right. How do you expect you will feel if you work really hard on something, expecting to get results, and then not get any results? Of course, you're going to feel bad. Is there such a thing as following 90% for real?
Good question. I'll give you the answer, and you might not like it so much. But people who are 100% on the diet, people who are following everything they should be doing, are actually, in reality, 90%. Because there's some miscommunication, there's some misunderstandings, there's some miscalculations. Nutrition labels aren't 100% accurate. There could be a mistake you're not even aware of. That time you got the chicken from that particular takeout, you didn't know that they marinated in extra heavy mayonnaise that's even more fattening than the full fat mayonnaise you have in your fridge.
Right.
When you have an initial appointment at a nutritionist, how long is that? 45 minutes? An hour and a half? It's not 10 hours long. They're not going through every single nuance.
They're not going through 4 years of schooling in the nutritional sciences.
They're giving you a general idea of what you should do, and they calculate that there will be a 10% discrepancy.
Right. The plan that your nutritionist makes will account for that 10% standard margin for error.
And you, the dieter, you don't walk around with a food scale everywhere you go. You sometimes eyeball food. You don't walk around with a calculator and calculate to the calorie everything you eat. You don't walk around with a database of the calories and carbs of every food in the world. So there will be a 10% discrepancy. And that type of 10% discrepancy is fine.
Right.
But if you add on to that, not only are you doing 90% of 90%, you're not even doing anything. So the take-home message is, follow your diet 100%. You'll be thrilled with the results. It'll be easier than almost following a diet. If you realize that 90% is a waste of time, then you're not going to do it 90%. You're going to realize, like I have, that dieting is not so bad. If you do it 100% and you realize that's your only option, you find out that you can live like that. It's not that you don't want to do it, and it's not that it's too hard to do it. It's that you tell yourself that it's not really necessary. But I'm telling you now that it is necessary, and not only is it necessary, it's much easier and totally effective when you do it 100%. And that takes us to the end of this episode.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you join us next time.